Hi there. This is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And we are very happy to have attorney Joseph Nivin with us out of New York City today. And we are going to be talking about a very interesting topic, and it is paternity issues in court. So I just wanted to welcome you here today. Thank you so much. This is going to be quite an entertaining interview, I think.
I think so too. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let me just tell you folks before we get started, I'm looking through the questions, and I was just saying to attorney Nivin, we need a whiteboard for this. This is going to be the stuff that soap operas are made of. All right, so paternity issues. This is like this, it really is like you always see these plots on TV. I feel like they're always in the movies and on TV. And these are like, I guess the strangest things that happen in real life. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. I deal with paternity in my profession. So yes, I've definitely seen plenty.
Do you have a lot of people that need paternity tests in order to determine whether they need to pay child support or get visiting rights and that sort of thing?
See, I have one where paternity test just came back, yes, and we're about to start the child support because it did show that he is the father. I represent the mother. She said that she never had any doubts, but yes, the DNA test was just done and showed that she was right, he's the father. I did one recently where my client wanted a DNA test and the court told him that he couldn't have one. And other than that, I represented somebody on an appeal where he was told that he wasn't allowed to have a DNA test, even though he wanted one. And before that, yeah, I've had a few.
Wow. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, so I can imagine that it comes up.
Yes.
And yeah, you know, it's 50% of the marriages are ending in divorce. You know that there are people that are cheating, and you know, sometimes mistakes happen. And so one of the first questions that we have is, let's say that I am separated from my husband. I'm going to go through a divorce, but I have a boyfriend, and I got pregnant by my boyfriend, and now I need to get child support from him. What should I do?
So first of all, in New York, we have something called the presumption of legitimacy, which means that if the mother was married at the time the child was born, then the husband is actually presumed to be the father of the child. So in order to get child support from the boyfriend, of course, the boyfriend will have to be served, but the husband will actually also have to be served because he is presumed to be the legal father. So there are actually, his rights are at issue. So I'll take a step back. So let's say that the mother has a child, she's married, and she believes the boyfriend is actually the father. So if the so in the very beginning, the husband will actually have the right to seek custody and visitation with the child, even though the mother believes that he is not the biological father. So he'll actually have to be brought into court. Most likely he will say, no, I'm not the father. He does actually have the right to contest it. But yes, the proceeding will actually have to include him. He'll have to be served and have the opportunity to appear in court to be heard as to why it is the boyfriend should be declared the legal father rather than him.
Wow. So first of all, what an embarrassing situation to be in. If you're already having issues in your marriage, or you're going through separation, you've moved things along so quickly that has got to complicate and make what is already kind of a sensitive situation, even like 100 times worse.
Yes.
So good for you for dealing with this all the time. All right. Well, I think that was a great answer. The second one is equally as interesting that you had. And it's like, let's say that I'm the boyfriend and I got a married person pregnant
Mhm.
what if I would like to have visitation with my child?
Yep. So if you're the boyfriend, you will have to serve the mother and also her husband. Um, in many cases, this comes up a lot in cases where the mother has been separated for a very long time and just never bothered to get a divorce. And in those cases, the mother is often able to get what's called an affidavit of non-access from the husband, which is an affidavit saying, it's completed by the husband saying that he has not had sexual intercourse with her for a very long time, and that therefore it's a biological impossibility that he is the father of the child. And very often the mothers are actually able to get those affidavits from their husbands. Um, in other cases, the husband just simply will not appear. Um, and the court will give a DNA test to the boyfriend, and they'll be able to show that the presumption of legitimacy, meaning the presumption that the child is a child of the marriage, is overcome, and therefore find the boyfriend, and rather than the husband, is the legal father. In which case, once the boyfriend gets an order saying that he is the legal father and not the husband, then he is able to seek custody and visitation.
Wow. Okay. So again, in this situation, the husband, who had nothing to do with it, is dragged into this,
Yes.
which is, wow. I didn't even think about that. That's definitely interesting. Everyone's getting it.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of attorneys involved, and he didn't even have anything to do with it.
Right. It's an outdated notion because New York, decades and decades ago, said they're not going to create bastard children, meaning that they're going to assume that if a child is born of a marriage, that the child is legitimate and is therefore the child of the mother's husband. Today, all it seems to do is create unnecessary litigation, but New York has never actually repealed this law, which means that, yes, like you're saying, a husband who's probably been separated for years and years and years is dragged into this litigation between a mother and her boyfriend just because the mother and her husband never took the time to actually get divorced.
Yeah, and that's got to be a little hurtful as well. I mean, to have to relive that, and then you're brought, not only do you have to find out that your ex is, with child with somebody else's child, now you have to go hire an attorney to prove that it's not yet. Like, that's just doubly, it seems unnecessary. But.
Well, not necessarily. They usually don't hire attorneys. For the most part, if they do have any kind of communication with the mother, they will execute an affidavit of non-access, meaning I did not have sexual intercourse at the time this child was conceived. And then they're done. But
okay.
Of course, I'm sure that they are still bothered by the mother coming to them saying, "Hi, you need to sign this. This way I can get child support from the guy that came after you."
Yeah. It's ugly. Well, speaking of more breakups, which is usually what we speak of when we speak, what if I have an ex-girlfriend who is pregnant with my child? What should I do in that situation to have the rights that I need to my child?
Sure. So the easiest thing, assuming that you're not married to her, is to go to the hospital at the time the child is born, and you will get the chance to execute what is called an acknowledgement of paternity, which is something saying that you are the father of the child. So if you execute that acknowledgement, then you are the legal father of the child, and you can go to court and seek custody and visitation. Now, the acknowledgement of paternity does also mean that you do have an obligation to support your child. So that also means that your ex-girlfriend has the right to go to court and seek child support from you. Now, let's say that you do not go to the hospital and you do not execute the acknowledgement of paternity. Then you can also register with what's called the putative father registry, which means that you have the right to seek custody and visitation, and your ex also has the right to seek child support from you. Now, if you don't do either, you can also go to court and file what's called a paternity petition, meaning you're seeking a court order, you're seeking a court order saying that you are the legal father. Now, if you go to court and you serve your ex-girlfriend with this petition for paternity, and she admits that you're the father, that will automatically mean that there will be child support proceedings that start, directing you to pay child support. It also means that you can seek custody and visitation.
Okay. And in that case, I mean, I'm just assuming that that's what they would want to do.
Right.
Now, this is pretty interesting because I think that this happens a lot because we've got a lot more Brady Bunch situations nowadays where, you know, families are merging. They've had kids from other families. I personally probably know of 10 people in that situation, and you know, it's just the norm now. You know what? And these people still possibly could break up after merging their families. So let's say that I'm a man and I, because we're talking about paternity, and I raise my girlfriend's children as if they were my own, but then we've broken up and I've been served with paternity papers. Can I get a DNA test?
It depends. So there are cases where the court finds what's called equitable estoppel. So what that means is that there's a man who raised a child as his own, and this of course assumes there's no already established legal father for the child, and then the parties break up and the mother serves him with a paternity petition. So if he has held himself out to be the child's father, if the child considers him to be his or her father, and for all intents and purposes he is the father except for biology, the court may actually find that he is what's called stopped from seeking DNA. What that means is that the man has allowed the child to consider him to be the father. So then when the mother comes and says, now you need to support this child, he can't just say, well, I'm not the biological father. So the short answer is that he may actually be stopped from seeking DNA and be ordered to pay child support without there actually being a DNA test.
Oh my God, really?
Yes, that does happen.
That was probably not an appropriate thing for me to say, but that's unbelievable. That
Yes.
I've never heard. How many times in an interview with you do I say, I have never heard of this before? I guess the family court's even more interesting than I ever thought it would be.
Right.
That he would have to pay child support if the child considers him the father.
The standard is an operative parent-child relationship.
Wow. Huh. Well, I guess be careful where you hang your hat.
Yep.
If you're a guy out there and you're, you know, if you're moving in and you're going to act like the family's caregiver, then you better be prepared to do that until the kids are of age.
Yep, 21.
That's really interesting. Now hold on one second. This last one is easy. Okay. These were all complicated questions this week. So if I'm the mother and I just had a child and I've broken up with my boyfriend, can I get a DNA test? That's how you question it. Yeah. The father says he wants a DNA test. Sorry. What happens next? Totally botched that one. I apologize.
Not at all. So you're the mother, you have a child with your boyfriend, and you serve him with paternity papers, and he asks for a DNA test. So the only real basis to oppose it would be on the basis that we just talked about, equitable estoppel. If the boyfriend has allowed for an operative parent-child relationship to be established. Now, of course, this assumes that there are no other grounds for him to already be declared the legal father, like if you were married to him at the time of conception or birth, or if he has signed acknowledgement of paternity, or if he has filed the putative father registry. If none of those factors are available, then the only basis to oppose it would be if he has already created an operative parent-child relationship. Now, if the child is under usually 3, then he is probably entitled to a DNA test because it's very difficult before the child turns around 3 for there to be an operative parent-child relationship. If the child is over 3, like let's say at the extreme, if the child is 13 and the child already calls him daddy or dad or pops or anything like that, the dad has said, I'm the father, there's nobody else, the child sees the father, then you probably can argue equitable estoppel. There's already an operative parent-child relationship and he's not entitled to DNA. But if none of those factors are present, then he is probably entitled to a DNA test.
Wow. Okay. So this has all been, very, very interesting. I mean, I guess there are definitely other situations in family court where if you're acting a certain way, even though it's not official, like if you're just living with someone for 20 years, you might still have to go through all the proceedings of a divorce. I guess it's the same thing with children, where if you're acting like the parent, whether you are or not, they consider you the parent. So you have to do all of the caretaking after the relationship ends. So that is a huge lesson to learn for people that are considering new relationships.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, and this is just a personal question. If people are getting into a relationship and they already know that the person has kids, is there like kind of they're not getting married, so there's not a prenup where they can handle this, but are there any, I guess, papers they can sign that would make them not have to take care of the kids after the breakup?
Well, the best way would be if they could find a way for the biological father to be deemed the legal father. So if there's already another man who is found to be the legal father, you don't have to worry about this at all.
Right.
As far as anything like a prenup, then no, because there is case law out there which says that parents cannot waive child support because child support is the right of the child and not of the parent. And of course, kids can't sign away their own rights to child support because they're not of age to sign a contract. So via prenup, postnup, anything like that, no. That's not really a way to do it. I think that the only real way to avoid these kinds of issues is to ensure that the biological father is also the legal father, to make sure that the mother serves him with paternity papers, so that this way there's already court orders saying that the biological father is the legal father. All
right. So if your girlfriend's been lazy about it and hasn't really chased him for anything, then just make sure that she takes care of all that before you move in.
Yes.
It sounds nuts, but I mean, I guess you see this all the time.
There was a crazy case which I wasn't a part of, but most attorneys know about it, where a man actually found out during his divorce that he was not the father of the children of the marriage. And of course, then he said, well, I shouldn't have to pay child support. But first of all, there's already the presumption because they were born during the marriage. And secondly, given that there was a parent-child relationship between him and the children, that he was stopped from getting a court order saying that he was not the legal father. And then after they got divorced, she actually got into a relationship with the biological father of the children, and they were living together as an intact family. And he filed papers asking that he be relieved of his child support obligation on the basis that he was effectively funding an intact family. It went all the way up to the Court of Appeals, which is like the Supreme Court in New York, and they said no, that he did have to pay child support to the children that were born during the marriage. So he is effectively funding an intact family with 25% of his income.
With the man who actually fathered the children.
Correct.
Wow, that is bad karma for that woman someday. I think
yes.
That is really bad.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, that is just leaving me speechless.
The laws don't always comply with common sense, that's for sure.
No, they don't. I mean, and that's why it's a good thing to have an attorney help you out with these paternity issues. So right. What can an attorney do for you if you do get served with papers, paternity papers, and you're unsure of what to do next?
Sure. So it really depends on the situation. if if you are the putative father, we call the person that has been served with a paternity petition. If the child is very young, then you're probably pretty safe, and we'll advise you that you do have the right to DNA. And the best thing that we can do for you is to defend you when the child support proceedings start, assuming that you are found to be the father. Now, technically, you do have the right, even if the DNA test says that you're the father, to a hearing, but I've never seen a case where somebody actually took advantage of that. What a hearing would do is, let's say that you say, you know, the test has to be wrong. I've never met this woman, much less had sex with her. Then, of course, we could defend you in the hearing, but I've never actually seen that happen. So in a case like that, then we could really, the place where we could really help you is if you're found to be the biological father, and you want us to defend you in a child support case. Now, if this is a case where there is actually an equitable estoppel issue where you do have some kind of relationship with the child, but it may or may not rise to the level of an operative parent-child relationship, then we could certainly defend you in what's called an estoppel hearing and try to get you a DNA test. Now, of course, the DNA test comes back and says that you are the father, then
there's no defense.
What?
Then there's no defense.
Probably not. Just
Right.
as long as it's not the kind of case where there's a chance that it's wrong, where you're telling me that you didn't have sex with her at a time that the child was conceived, then of course there is some kind of defense. Those situations are pretty much non-existent. So if we go through an estoppel hearing and we win, and then you get a DNA test and it shows that you are the father, then of course there are questions about whether or not it was worth it to go through all of that. And then in that case, we're defending you in a child support case. If you're somebody that actually wants to be declared the father, if you are willing to pay child support and you just want your rights, custody, and visitation, then most likely, in most cases, the mother will consent to you getting DNA. It's rare the husbands really contest that. If they do, of course, I'll defend you. And then once we get you an order of affiliation, meaning an order saying that you're the father, then we'll defend you in a custody visitation case, and of course make sure that the child support order is something that you can pay.
Wow, so that's very interesting. And usually I hear about it the other way around, like something happened to the father, maybe he's deceased, or maybe he went to jail, and somebody, the new boyfriend, wants to step up and be there. You always kind of hear that story, but today I've heard the story of the poor guy that just wants to leave, and it wasn't his children, but he was there long enough for them to consider him their dad. So I mean, this is definitely eye-opening, as all of these interviews seem to be. So I hope people are tuning in and just using some of the things that we talk about as precaution when you're getting into relationships.
Yes.
And that's really all it's meant to do. I mean, it's in the children. I love that the children are always, thought that their best interest is always taken into view of the courts. And I think that that's really all that matters. But if you don't want to have to pay for kids that aren't yours, I guess just really take those precautions and
yes.
Make sure that there's something there to protect yourself. So this is great. Is there anything else that we left out? I know we've had a lot of crazy soap opera type situations we've talked about today, and you really handled all these questions well.
Thank you. Now, I think that most people's heads are spinning, it seems like, so.
Most people's heads, mine.
Yours is spinning. Just imagine the people that are actually going through this.
Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for them. I feel bad for the kids mostly, because they do get attached. So.
Yes.
All right. Well, great. So I want to thank you again for coming in here on a Friday afternoon and just livening things up with these topics. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. So thank you so much again for coming on. We really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Have a good weekend.
Okay. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.